Greetings, everybody, and I see some familiar names and familiar faces there, so it's really good to know that I'm amongst some of my esteemed and very good friends. So thank you for that. So it's a personal story about insights that I gained while contributing to the production of this book, Knysna Estuary Jewel. A Knysna Estuary Jewel of the Garden Route. I've only lived in Knysna for 6 years, so I didn't know an awful lot about the estuary. And so when we embarked on this book, it was quite an interesting learning exercise, and I'm going to share some of those insights that I gained while contributing to the production of the book. So while listening to this talk, I would like you to think of one of your own favorite places, because Knysna has become one of my favorite places, and I want you to try and think of one of your favorite places and how this talk may relate to your favorite place. And it could be a place that you just enjoy quietly on your own, or it could be a place that you like to enjoy with family and friends. So I live in Knysna, and it's a small town, and it's really founded on the Knysna Estuary. Just about everything that happens in Knysna is because of the presence of the estuary. So the estuary is central to the economy. It's central to everything people do in and around Knysna. Thank you. Next. Okay, now, perhaps like many of you, I have developed favorite places to which I like to take visitors when I have them to Knysna. For example, I would like to take them to the heads, which you can see there, where the estuary enters the sea. And the other place I like to take them to is a stop on the Brenton Road to the sea, where one gets a wonderful view of the estuary. Now that view site is, if you're looking at the picture, it's up on your left, where you're up on the highland there, and you're looking across the estuary. Now, when I've taken people to these sites, up until recently, I've sort of said, "Oh, isn't it a beautiful place?" You know, but I've often wondered, what do I tell them about the estuary? How do I inform them more about the estuary? So, have you experienced the same feelings, perhaps, when you take friends to your favorite place? You go there, and it's a beautiful spot and all that, but you don't have much to communicate to them about that particular site. Have there been times when you've taken friends to your favorite place and wondered how you could enrich the discussion so that they too could learn more about the wonders that you see in your favorite place? So Knysna Estuary Jewel of the Garden Route was published towards the end of last year. And now when I go and stand at the heads, or I look across the sea, because of the book and because of what I've learned, I have an intriguingly different story that I can tell my visitors. Next slide. For example, if you look in the middle, you'll see a little track in green running to a reddish purple dotted line. That's a line that runs from the estuary to where the shoreline used to be 75 kilometers away. So was it really possible that the Agulhas Plains stretched 75 kilometers south from where we would be standing on the Knysna Heads? And if it was, with this plain now 75 meters long, was this plain with the river meandering across it perhaps the magnet that drew our early hominin ancestors, the hunters and gatherers, to this landscape? Was it a rich environment where they have found or could have found stable and varied food staples? And if we think so, how do we know that it was a rich environment? And if it was, how do we know how they harvested these? It would require tools. How did they design the tools? And how did the design evolve? And in fact, here in this area, we find evidence of stone, for example, being connected to wood, possibly amongst the first time ever we can see that they may have used stone to form axes or some kind of defense mechanism. But it's not only the middens that we are probably more familiar with the shells and all that sort of stuff. We can learn a lot from those, but what about the tracks and traces that are left in the sand? And here you can see some pictures of tracks and traces. The bottom right-hand one, for example, is the trace of a crocodile that's wandered across the sand in those early days. Now, these track sites provide us with a census of which animals, including humans, were moving across the dunes and the beaches in those times. And interestingly enough, the tracks and traces show us that this was a rich environment with hippos, crocodiles, elephants, longhorn buffaloes, and much, much more. But also of interest is the tracks show us what look like footprints in shoes. So it might be that the human tracks suggest that this was where humans first ever wore footwear. Now, if we move to the site that I was talking about up on the hill, the site on the Brenton Road, you can see we have a panoramic view of the estuary. On the left, you'll see where the river enters the estuary, and it's small compared with the size of the basin or the size of the estuary. In fact, it only has an average flow of about 3 cubic meters per second, and it would, if it was left to the river to fill the basin, it would take months before the basin ever got filled. By contrast, the tidal exchange is 18 million cubic meters per day. So here is an estuary with a tidal exchange that is contained in the basin and leads us to speculate that the estuary is primarily fueled by material that might be imported from the ocean shelf, because you've got this huge surge of water coming in off the shelf and going out every day. Now, when you look from this view, you can see, you get a real impression of the basin. You can see the steep topography surrounding the basin, surrounding the estuary. And it's easy from this view to appreciate that if sea level rises, the surface level of the estuary changes comparatively little. It's almost like filling a basin. It's got nowhere to spread out, so the basin just gets deeper and deeper. And within the last 120,000 years, which is a comparatively short geological time interval, sea level has risen and fallen by over 130 meters in this estuary. Well, when you look at those houses across there, it doesn't take much imagination to appreciate the implications of sea level rise for the infrastructure. So we can see how in this picture, we can see what's called Leisure Isle and Knysna Island here. And we can see how the presence of this fringing infrastructure, roads, houses, and other property will be so vulnerable, will render even small changes in water level something of a pretty serious challenge in the future. Now, if you wait until the tide is out, on a low spring tide, for example, you can see that the seagrass beds and salt marshes, all those green areas there, cover about 2,400 hectares within the estuary functional zone. Now, these wetlands or seagrass beds or reed beds are where most or a great number of the organisms in the estuary find a home, and which contributes so significantly to the biodiversity of the estuary, which is one of the most biodiverse estuaries in not only South Africa, but in Southern Africa. Now, while most of the animals living in the intertidal zone have been studied because that's obviously a lot easier. You can potter around and scratch about and not have to use diving instruments or diving tools. But we still know, even today, despite the importance of this estuary, even today, we know very little about what lives below the low tide level. And as I say, this is an opportunity awaiting for some enthusiast to come and get to work. What we learn also from this book and from the studies is that because of overfishing, the dusky cob and white steenbras have decreased by 95%. And this alerts us to the urgency that must be attached to control over bait harvesting and fishing. For example, the white steenbras spends a good deal of its time in the estuary growing up, and when it gets mature, it goes out to breed. So if it's caught before it has a chance to become mature, then the population just crashes, and that's exactly what's been happening. What is also surprising is that the bird folk, and I saw a couple of them registering for the talk, is that despite the importance of Knysna as a bird habitat and the biodiversity and all that goes with it, the Knysna Estuary is not listed either as a global or sub-regional important bird or biodiversity area, and it's not listed as a Ramsar site. So maybe this is a challenge, looking for somebody to start driving it, to move it up into some more higher level protection status. Now I'd like to read to you a poem that Alan Whitfield, the senior author and editor of the book, wrote, which I find very moving. It's about the Knysna and its estuary. This is a place where the river meets the sea, where the past meets the present, and amber waters from ancient forests come up against the flood of the tide. This is a place where the heads stand guard above surging swells, and silver shoals fold and unfold aquatic secrets to interested anglers, where the shrill call of a windrill echoes across the mud flats, and the crack of pistol shrimps herald low tide, where a fish eagle soars high above the languid lagoon and sends out a message that is transmitted unchanged across Africa. For evening has arrived, and as the sun plunges towards the silver sea, and if you remain absolutely still and listen to your past, you may even hear an old elephant bull splashing through the shallows, and our hominid ancestors laughing as they collect intertidal seafood from Coney Glen. This is a paradise of forest, ferns, and the tides of life, a place called Knysna. How did listening to this poem affect you? Did it arouse sort of strong positive feelings about attachment? Did you feel you could attach to this place? Did it arouse a sense of, if you lived here, a sense of belonging to the Knysna Estuary? perhaps a sense, an intense sense of feeling that this is my home. I feel here I am at home. Why is this important? Well, it's important because the deeper the sense of attachment we feel to the estuary or to your special place, for example, the greater should be your commitment or our commitment to care for it. There's a relationship between the sense of attachment that we feel and our commitment to care for it. When we have a strong sense of attachment, we behave differently. It changes our behavior. We suddenly almost become different people because of this deep sense of caring. And because of that, prospects for collective stewardship, acting together, improve. But what determines our sense of attachment? Well, there are a number of things. Perhaps it's that the estuary is, for example, a source of food. People, if you were a subsistence fisherman, for example, you would feel strongly attached to the estuary simply because that's where your survival is, that's where you get your daily food. For others, it might be a place of work. You work on the boats, or you work on the estuary, or you work in some way related to the tourism industry. Or it might be a place you come to do a PhD or a master's degree, a place to learn. It's a place for recreation, or a place just to sit quietly while the sun sets and feel part of the estuary and its environment. Now you'll see that we have different attachments to the estuary, and because we have different attachments to the estuary, and they have different foundations, and we are quite strongly founded in our attachments. For example, if your livelihood depended on it, you would have a very strong foundation to your connection. But because we have different foundations, we do not always see or agree on how best to manage the estuary. But what about those who feel disenfranchised? Now, we can envisage this easily in the context of the Knysna Estuary, where a sense of being disenfranchised might prevail among those people who, for historical reasons, social and economic reasons, feel excluded. There is no connection between them and the estuary. So stewardship, therefore, requires that we give careful attention to ethically conscientious governance. And it requires that we give a commitment to the promotion of justice. We're not alone in this challenge. If you were to look at what's been going on in the Puget Sound in the west coast of the US, for example, you'll see there that they say there is much to learn. We say there's much to learn from experiences elsewhere in the world. For example, the Puget Sound Compact, where people have entered into a solid agreement, a compact. And the compact is that they will advance solutions to achieve a thriving, racially equitable, and sustainable central Puget Sound region through leadership, visionary planning, and collaboration. So there are lessons for us in other parts of the world. In one of the chapters in the book, towards the end, Sandparks, who are the custodians and managers of the estuary essentially, have battled with this whole business of stewardship and collective engagement and collective management. They say a beacon of hope for Sandparks in the ongoing challenge of managing the complex Knysna Estuary system is the recent rise of community activism. Local individuals and groups who are passionate about making a positive difference through their individual and collective action, and who are using innovative ways of doing so together with sandparks. This is the first step in individuals taking responsibility for their own impacts, a vital step towards co-management of the estuary and towards the local Knysna community taking collective responsibility for the jewel of the garden route. So essentially, the future of the estuary is in our hands. It is what we choose to do or not to do, and how we do it, that will make the difference. Future generations will hold us accountable for the decisions we made and the outcomes of those decisions. Now let us return for a moment to your favorite place. Let me ask you, are you ready to enjoy gaining new insights? If you are, why not consider writing a book with your colleagues? There is much to learn. Thank you. Thank you for joining this talk to make a positive difference to network and learning. I appreciate your taking part. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. It was fascinating, and it really made me think about my favorite place. I'm sure everybody in the audience is longing to share their favorite places. And I welcome everybody, if they want to, in the chat, to jot down their favorite place and maybe one word describing why it's their favorite place. But I also would like to open the floor for questions. And just to any suggestions or thoughts that people have, or thoughts and questions. So I'm going to open the floor. I don't see any questions in the chat yet, but I welcome any from the audience. Charles, while we're waiting, I'll share with you my favorite place. I grew up in Johannesburg, going to my favorite place in the bush, which was Lapalala. Charles, I can't hear you if you want to unmute yourself. I think you were saying something.
I just said Johannesburg, that's a favorite place.
Yes, well, actually, at the time it was, because it was right in the veld, and we had meerkats living on our property and owls, and it was very beautiful.
Oh,
But we used
beautiful.
to go off to the bush in the Waterberg and in Lapalala. I don't know if you've heard of Lapalala, but it was a beautiful, beautiful place. I'm sure it is still. But my favorite thing was that we could walk on our own, just the people that we were with, and you wouldn't see anybody else. And I think that's a very rare experience in the world, actually. So I feel very privileged to have had that experience. Would anybody else like to share anything with us? Okay, so I've got a chat over here from Jennifer Cole Rouse saying, thank you so much, very moving. I was in Knysna for 2 nights with a small French group in January. We did the trip over to the heads and then up to the top and then did the walk down. Just wonderful. I'm sure you know exactly the walk, Charles.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, and then I've got 2 hands up. Liesel, go ahead.
Okay, good evening. Apology, my dog might talk along as well. Charles, thank you for the presentation. I was wondering, because you obviously now giving a talk a little bit to the converted as well, but what can we do more to make people sensitive about our estuaries because of all the important role they play in habitats and ecological systems, the breeding ground. I mean, I always tell the students, I'm at the University of the Free State, I always tell the students that an estuary is the nursery of fish. It's the kindergarten. Then they start laughing at me because I really don't think people in the inland really understands in what stage our estuaries are. So what more can we do?
Well, I think the big challenge is to get people to appreciate that people value the estuary in different ways, and to get those who value it to come together and find ways of working together. For example, if if you like yachting, or you like kayaking, or you like kiteboarding, or you like fishing, that's you know, you need those people, and the businessmen. I mean, in Knysna, for example, I've not uncommonly seen, if I go out to the waterfront, it's not uncommon to see people who have some slops from a shop or something, from a restaurant, go and pour it down the stormwater drain and let it go out. So education is critical. But in Knysna at the moment, I'm afraid we've really got to get to grips with municipality taking more account of their responsibilities, because we're in a bad state at the moment with sewage discharge and all sorts of things like that. But we have to get together, and we have to work and agree to work together, and not be selfish about, no, doesn't matter if I race around in my boat and churn up all the seagrass beds. I'm just having fun, and it doesn't matter about the Knysna seahorse or anything like that, as long as I'm having fun. So we've just got to find ways of working together, and that's why it's so important to look at things like what's happened in Florida, or, for example, in Puget Sound, where they have got together and they have formed these compacts, which are binding agreements about behavior and what will happen and what won't happen.
Okay, in the meantime, Charles, let me just read to you a question, and there's been an answer already in the chat. Evening, everyone. I just wanted to ask a question in terms of the Knysna elephants, and if there is still a viable population found there, and if they utilize the estuary. And then there was an answer by Christopher Payson saying, no, there is only one female left, and she roams the forest some distance from the estuary. Charles, have you got anything on that?
No, that is correct. There is only one left, and she lives basically in the forests. And I don't think she's, as far as I know, she may never have been seen down as far as this. There was a time when sand parks were trying to introduce more elephants to, give her some company, but that's a difficult thing because of dietary preferences and all sorts of things, and that never really worked. So I'm afraid, sadly, she's a lonely old girl that wanders the forests on her own.
Charles, there's a comment from Ted Buerter. He says, Charles, this was a fascinating presentation. Knysna is truly a very special place. What worries me is the overdevelopment and overuse of spaces such as this wonderful space. Human population growth, poor management, and degradative changes will, I fear, initiate changes that may well not be reversible. Plet 2 is special, but is also being affected by a burgeoning population. My personal beacon here is Robberg. That's from Ted Buerter.
Ted, it's good to hear you and good to see you. Ted and I were together many years ago in the botany department at UKZN. Yeah, Ted, I mean, look, we are faced with this burgeoning population, and it's a great, it's not so much the growth in the population that's the real problem, I think. The real problem is how we manage the way in which these folk have to live. If we could, find a way of ensuring that their lives were, and their toilet facilities and their, all of that stuff worked properly, and this waste collection, we would be in a much stronger position. But Yeah, I think one of the growing concerns I know, for example, at Teeson Island. Now, Teeson Island is one of those villages you will have seen in the picture. It's a very upmarket place, and increasingly because of the growth in tourism, many of the owners now rent those places out over the summer. So you get a whole lot of people coming in who have no idea about the estuary and no idea about boat ethics or anything like that. And it's very difficult to get them to actually conform to the standards that we would like them to agree to. And so there's a lot of work to be done there as well.
Thanks, Charles. There's a comment or a question by Zander Barkhazen in the chat saying, "Hi, good evening. Just want to know if bull sharks are also using the estuary."
I think they are. I think that's correct. But yeah, we. I'm not particularly a fish guy or shark guy, so but I would be surprised if they weren't.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, can I just say that he could. The book is available online, so you can go onto the web and he could look it up there.
Charles, yeah, there was a sentence that I came across and I just wanted to get your feeling on it. I'm going to read it. It was as follows: "People of color have been excluded from natural environments for a long time. How do we empower communities to speak with their own voice of experiences on environmental issues? Instead, the narrative around environment continues to be determined by privilege."
Well, that's yeah. It's really about empowering people, giving people the confidence to engage. Sometimes they feel they are disenfranchised because they don't have the confidence or the knowledge to engage. And one of the projects that I personally would like to get going in the Knysna Basin area is what I call youth empowerment. And it comprises a number of modules. So young people would do a module, for example, on the ecology, so they had a good foundation of that. They would do a module on the economic value of the estuary and who benefits and who doesn't benefit and how the benefits spread through value chains and things like that. They would do a module on public speaking and report preparation. And eventually, the last module would be on giving presentations to municipalities, schools, government, whatever, so that by the time they came out, they were well informed and well able to talk about the subject. Not just, so many of the uh, ecological training that I've seen, not only in the Knysna Estuary, focuses on giving people a little bit of understanding about the ecology, but that's not enough. They need to be able to move beyond that and gain the confidence to be able to engage and start putting pressure on, for example, where pressure is needed. And really, the youth is where I think we need to give a lot more focus, and we need to give them, make sure that they are the ones that are willing to carry the banner and fight the fight.
Super, Charles. Thank you for that. I can see our Share Screen Africa LCA colleagues in a big picture. It looks like there's a torch or something going on. Hello, everybody. A glass of wine. I think we should all be cheersing with a glass of wine. I'm just going to ask Luke Hall to unmute yourself and to ask a question.
Yes, sorry, ma'am. Evening, everyone. I just wanted to ask a question. I just wanted to contribute on the favorite place topic. Well, I think my favorite place would be St. Lucia Estuary. And since we're talking about estuaries, I thought I'd just chip in there. Just due to also like the high biodiversity of all the birds, fish, and species there, and especially like since I'm a very big birder, so like the forest birding is one of my favorite things to take part in. So I thought I'd just like to add that this evening.
Thanks, Luke. I can see lots of head nodding going on in the audience as well. Thank you.
Did Luke say?
Laurie.
Did Luke,
Oh, sorry, Charles, you go.
Sorry, did Luke say he was a forest birder?
I think just a avid birder.
Avid birder. Okay, good man.
Right, Johan, Chris, and Rwandan team. What have you got for us?
Hi, good evening, everybody. So, Kirsten, I just quickly checked in on the shark question to get confirmation on that. So I checked in with the previous speaker on Unlocking Nature, Justin Blake. And Justin is an absolute shark fanatic and expert. And he quickly confirmed for us that they do visit the Knysna Estuary in summertime. So, yeah, you can, if you swim in the estuary in summertime, watch out. The bull sharks are swimming with you.
How are you guys all doing in Rwanda?
There we are. We're struggling to connect a little bit of, yes, our Rwandese team, and we're struggling a little bit with connection. But anyway, lovely to see everybody. Charles, you might not remember, I worked with you and Andrew Fenton many years ago in Kruger, developing the communities forums around Kruger. We wrote a few articles, but anyway, good to see you all. And sorry that we are coming and going because of connectivity, but thanks, Charles, for tonight. And thanks, Kirsten, for hosting under quite difficult circumstances. Greetings from Rwanda.
Ah, wonderful. Laurie, I see that my past is catching up with me. I saw a little flash on the screen here saying that we were together at some point studying. Or
She said in the late 70s in KwaZulu-Natal.
Charles?
Yes.
I spearheaded the Department of Social Ecology in Kruger, and Andrew Fenter were his promoter, and we wrote a number of articles about the communities around the park and the forums that we started those years. You've had many students, but I'm certain you might have remembered the times and those forums, which are still running today, by the way. So just thought I'd share.
That was a wonderful period in my life, I must say, working with you guys and with Rivers guys and helping to get those minds around working with communities. It was just a wonderful time.
Yeah, it was extraordinary. Thanks, Charles. And thanks for tonight.
Thank you.
Charles, one more comment, which comes from Laurie. I think she's been trying to get hold through to us all the time, but hasn't been successful. So she's written, "Hi, Dr. Breen. I studied under you in ecology in the late 70s in KwaZulu-Natal." She then continues to say that she's very concerned about the estuaries in South Africa, particularly the Cape, with respect to sewage, spillages, and sludge.
Well, she's absolutely correct, Laurie. It's a real disaster. Municipalities are just not. Knysna, for example, I don't think it's ever, well, for 30 years or so, and probably longer, has never met the real required standard for sewage effluent. They say they meet it when it comes to E. coli or something, but that's not enough. You know, the nutrients and the nitrogen and phosphorus and the periodic discharges, it's just awful. In fact, it's so bad that Knysna Estuary is going to Knysna is going to feature on Carte Blanche this Sunday, I think. What a shambles it is at the moment. But it's not only Knysna, of course. Yeah.
Charles, thank you very much for this insightful talk. I think you've given us lots of food for thought, and also given us the catalyst to remember our favorite places and how committed we are to protecting them and other nature. So thank you very, very much. I think we're going to wrap up, and I wish everybody a beautiful evening still to come, or
Thank you so
or
much.
during the day if you're from a different place, obviously. Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much
Charles.
for having me. I really enjoyed being with you. Thank you.